Hello, and thank you all for joining us today for this episode of EnergySource Innovation Stream, where we aim to highlight new energy technologies with the potential to shape the global energy system. Wherever you find yourself in the world today, I hope you and your loved ones are healthy and well. My name is Zachary Strauss, Associate Director of Advanced Energy at the Atlantic Council Global Energy Center. Today, we'll be hearing from Nathan Johnson, Vice President of Development at Ocean Renewable Power Company, who will discuss how marine energy from river and tidal currents can play an important role in transitioning off-grid communities to predictable forms of renewable power. I have several reminders before we get started. First, you can follow us on Twitter at AC Global Energy and use the hashtag InnovationStream. We encourage you to post about what you hear today and share the stream with your colleagues and your friends. Second, after Mr. Johnson's presentation, you can submit your questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. But if you're watching another platform today, like YouTube or Facebook, unfortunately, I won't be able to take your questions. So please let me welcome Nathan Johnson to the Atlantic Council. Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today. As an opening question for you, how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted the marine energy industry in the United States?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. I really appreciate the invitation, the opportunity to speak today. I'm excited to describe our technology and our industry, and the COVID question is a great one. It certainly has impacted most companies around the world. For us, it's really validated our business model of working very closely in partnership with local communities and working with them to develop skill sets to deploy and inspect and maintain our systems. And in doing so, that's really provided a level of resiliency, not only to the pandemic, but other aspects of pressures around the world as well. So, I think it's been a challenge, but we certainly are very optimistic moving forward.
That's really great to hear. Thank you for sharing. I'd like to remind you one moment. Without further ado, so please, Nathan, when you're ready, you can go ahead and share your screen and begin your presentation, and the floor is yours.
All right, thanks. Let's get this up and running. And there we go. Can you see in presenter mode, Zach, or does this look good to you?
You need to click to presentation mode. We're seeing.
We'll switch that over. All right, excellent. Again, really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I'm going to move through things pretty quickly, hopefully to leave lots of times for question and answers. I'm really looking forward to that feedback. I'm going to provide a high-level overview of our company and the industry overall. What you're seeing on the slide here is our RivGen power system that is prior to being submerged below the river surface in a remote community called Iggiagig, Alaska. And we'll talk more about that and the industry overall going forward. A little bit of background on Ocean Renewable Power Company, or ORPC. We're headquartered in Portland, Maine. We're rapidly growing. We have over 30 employees now and hope to be around 45 employees in the next 12 to 18 months. We have subsidiaries in Montreal, Quebec, in Dublin, Ireland, and as well as in Punta Arenas in Chile. And those are all strategically located to capture some of the opportunities in front of us. We as a company focus on developing technology to harness the power of moving water, whether it's rivers, tides, or ocean currents, and really focus on developing technology to do so. We also have a development team, which I'm involved with, that is responsible for inserting that technology in ways that are economically, socially, and environmentally appropriate and compatible. So that includes early site characterization through economic modeling, as well as permitting, environmental monitoring, et cetera, right from concept into installation. As I mentioned before, in response to Zach's question on COVID, we really focus on working with local communities and working in partnership with them. And that's been a huge part of our success. Another part of our success has really been working with agencies in the US, Canada, Europe, both on the federal level as well as on the provincial or state level, to work on funding some of these early stage projects, which is so important to get devices in the water. So why hydrokinetics, which is a term that's used to describe the power of moving water? We think that there's huge opportunities globally. This map shows that both from a river, tidal, ocean current perspective, And from a renewable energy standpoint, wind and solar, which we're big proponents of, will get the world to a certain point, but there's a need for reliable baseload renewable energy. And that really can be achieved not only now, but in the future with these type of technologies. And they'll be a huge part of ultimately getting to 100% clean energy. We're really excited about the opportunity and are seeing a lot of opportunities globally associated with that. Also, when you look at this map, the vast majority of populations around the world are located near coastal resources or river resources. And so when you couple those resources with the demand, not only in utility grids, but remote communities, which we'll talk about, there's a real need there. And so, again, we're really excited about that. So what does our technology do and look like? This is our RivGen power system from above. Actually, when you're on the ground, you can't see anything because it's fully submerged. And the movement of the water turns our turbines, which consist of foils and struts in a shaft, which then turn a permanent magnet generator, which produces electricity to send to shore. This device that you see here has been deployed for roughly 2 years. It's the longest operating device of its kind in the Americas. And we've been really able to prove the resiliency and durability. This is an Alaskan community that has gone through 2 winters, different icing events, negative 40-degree temperatures, and through all of that, it's continued to operate. It's also the highest concentration of sockeye salmon in North America, perhaps the world, with tens of millions of juvenile salmon and millions of adult salmon passing by this device without a single recorded injury or mortality. So again, all this is done in very close partnership with the community that I'm going to talk about a little bit further. Our technology is what we'd call a cross-flow turbine technology, but there's a lot of other technologies as well. This is still kind of early stages in the industry. These are some examples of other types of turbines, tidal turbines that have multi-year operations. A lot of these are coming out of Europe, focused around the resources in Scotland and the English Channel, both on the English side as well as on the French side. And there's a lot of success. What you see is there's a wide variation in types of turbines. Many look like underwater wind turbines. Others look like cross-flow turbines like ourselves, or multi-blade or foil turbines. Some are on the surface, some are submerged. And as the industry advances and matures, there probably will be some level of agreement on which type of technologies work best in certain environments. Overall, again, rapid growth in the industry, which is exciting, not only for us, but for the other companies as well. ORPC is really focusing on any new technology is going to be expensive, a new technology in a new industry, certainly. And so we're really focusing on remote communities globally. And there's many, many communities that are energy challenged. There are 700 million people in the world that use diesel for electricity production, another 1.2 billion that either don't have access to energy at all or very unreliable energy. And it results in very high costs, but also environmental risk. I mentioned that the community of Igiugig, Alaska, has this high concentration of sockeye salmon. It's incredibly important to them culturally, to subsistence fishing, to a commercial fishing in Bristol Bay. And they're flying diesel into this community and storing it and burning it. And those all result in very high environmental as well as economic risk. And they're not alone. There's many communities in Alaska, northern Canada, southern Chile that face very, very similar challenges, as well as in places like the Western Amazon or in Central Africa. And these may be places where wind or solar may not be the best options. And again, the unique nature of hydrokinetic energy, river, tidal, is it's very predictable. And it can provide a baseload source, which is so important to ultimately achieving that getting off diesel. A little bit more information on the model that we're using in Igiugig, Alaska. We have been working with this community for a number of years in very, very close partnership. Very motivated community, very pragmatic, and just a pleasure to work with. Also, any community we work with, really, it's that local knowledge that is so important. The folks in the community know the river resource. They know how to get things done. They know the cultural importance and the existing uses. So it's all so important to developing those local partnerships. And so what we're doing is putting in 2 RivGen power devices and coupling that with a battery energy storage system to really minimize the use of the diesel generator. When the system is up and running in totality next summer, we think that a 60 to 90% of reduction in diesel will be achieved. The first device I already showed has been operating for over 2 years. This summer, we actually sent the second device to Igiagig. We sent power to the grid for the first time yesterday, actually, as part of this. And we've also commissioned the energy storage system. So we're well on our way to completing this system. And it's an amazing model for other communities, but not only remote communities. What we're seeing globally is this transition towards distributed energy resources. So even on utility grids, having this type of model that's resilient and secure with firm baseload power has a lot of value. So, it's something that we're excited about, not only in remote communities, but on the regular grid as well. And just to underscore, again, that, this is all achievable by working very, very closely with the community, a very motivated, forward-thinking community. It's a great partnership. And if folks, after the fact, get a chance to watch this video, there's about a 3-minute video that really highlights the community's perspective on and their motivation and their continued interest in this type of solution for their community. So with that, that was a lot of information very quickly. I will end it there. And again, hopefully we have plenty of time for lots of questions and answers. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to tell our story.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nathan, for sharing in your presentation. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot. As someone who's also interested in looking at baseload renewable opportunities like geothermal, I also think that hydrokinetic holds a lot of promise. So thanks for doing the work that you're doing. I'd like to remind our audience to submit your questions to the bottom of your screen in the Q&A portal, and I'll integrate them as appropriate. But just for those who aren't familiar, and just to revisit sort of what you discussed a little early in our presentation, can you give our audience just a high-level breakdown of exactly how these marine energy turbines work? So they're submerged in water, they're connected to a transmission system, it's energy storage components. Can you explain a little bit more how that works? And for example, how many kilowatt hours are currently installed or megawatt hours are installed here in the US? And what is your projected goal for that installation in the future?
Sure. So the answer is that it's highly variable in terms of the output of these devices. And that's mostly dependent on the resource. So just like a wind turbine, the windiest places you install, you're going to get the more output, which also has an impact on the cost of the power you produce. Water is actually 800 times more dense than air. So, that induces a lot of stress on the system, which is a need to be really resilient and robust, but also can result in a lot of power production. So our RivGen power system we rate it, there's different ratings in the industry, at 2.25 meters per second will produce approximately 40 kilowatts. And that's scalable up to 80 kilowatts at 3.5 meters per second. And 2 devices will certainly provide the majority of the load for the village of Igiagig. At times there'll be excess. So it depends on the time of year and coupling that all together. So fundamentally, the resource characterization up front is really important to understand and to be able to predict the power output, which once you're able to collect that good data, you're able to really leverage that moving forward. And it, with the lack of intermittency and that solar and wind face, there's a lot of increased value there. Fundamentally, I think the way you described it is how this works. The moving water, like wind, again, it's 800 times more dense, will, whether it's in an axial flow turbine or a cross flow turbine, will create in In the case of ORPC's device, we call them foils, and they're designed like an airplane wing so that moving water produces lift. And it's actually that lift that spins the turbine. Our device is a bit unique. It actually can spin in bidirectional flow. And so it is suitable both for river environments as well as in tidal environments. And back in 2012, we installed a large device in Cobsuc Bay, Maine, near the Canadian border. That was a tidal energy device. It was a successful demonstration.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And that leads me to a question I have from one of our veteran fellows, George Bonner, out of North Carolina. Are you developing devices for ocean currents as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, the approach that ORPC is taking is that that we have the same core technology, which we call our turbine generator unit, that's very modular and scalable. So the same technology you see in RivGen, we're developing multiple units where turbines are stacked for the tidal environment. And our next generation of tidal systems are actually tethered to anchors. The first generation actually sat on a foundation on the seabed. So being tethered allows you to place the device in the water column where there's resource, in deeper waters where there's typically ocean currents tend to be in deeper waters, like in North Carolina or off the coast of Florida. And then also it allows for us to be able to compensate for existing navigation or any other concerns. So that the tension mooring system is really important. So yes, absolutely. Ocean currents are really exciting. They do have their own challenges, primarily due to depth, but there certainly are significant resources off the US and Southern Africa and in Asia as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I love that there's a complementary opportunity for oceans as well as rivers. You mentioned obviously your project in Igiugig, Alaska, and you're based in Maine. Are there other opportunities or projects in the pipeline that you're excited about, whether from your company or elsewhere in the industry here in the US?
Yeah, we're very excited about the remote community opportunity, which is similar to Igiugig in northern Canada as well as in southern Chile. We're doing a lot of work in Patagonia, same challenges, but we're also really looking to drive down costs of our systems. We can compete today in those markets, but we really are focused on driving down costs so that we can compete in the lower 48. And we're developing versions of our technology, a new system we call modular RivGen that's supported by the US Department of Energy. That the way I describe it is it looks like one of our turbines inside a box culvert. So it's very modular, where you can interconnect systems in a horizontal or a vertical fashion, where you have ease to more equipment and also be able to integrate it to existing infrastructure. So if you think about bridge structures or flood control barriers or hydropower tail races, et cetera. And that's a technology that we're very excited about. We're getting a lot of positive feedback from the market. And there are a lot of opportunities in the continental US that we think are associated with that. Not only those integration with infrastructure, but larger river systems as well.
Thank you. So we have two really good questions, one of which from Kevin Fry, who is actually a former intern here with us. What do repairs look like for these systems? And for me, I'm thinking about, is there enough qualified personnel for this technology now to scale the industry when if something goes wrong or if there's an issue? Where do you see repairs and how do you see the development of qualified labor for this industry going forward?
Yeah, great question. So the RivGen power system I showed from Igiugig is actually designed with that in mind. So in these remote communities, there's little equipment or access to equipment. So that system sits on what we call our pontoon support structure, and that's a ballasted pontoon structure that is submerged to the riverbed. And in order for us to do inspection and maintenance, it only takes local fishing vessels or skiffs to purge that system and bring it back to the surface. Other companies have different methods. They all have their pluses and minuses, but it's that's a way that we've been able to really create a system that we are pretty confident in terms of deploying and retrieving as well as inspecting. Our systems themselves are designed for example, the generator for a 5-year maintenance cycle, the systems overall, 20-year lifespan. And again, getting back to the note, the first note on COVID, we've worked very, very closely with the community. And in 2020, we had a planned inspection of the device in Igiagig. And we were very cognizant of some of the travel restrictions and concerns around COVID. And we have 2 staff in Alaska, but typically we would send staff from headquarters as well to do that. And we were able to do that planned inspection using the 2 folks we had in Alaska, but with huge support from the community that has become very, very skilled in how to deploy, retrieve, assess these devices. And again, it demonstrates the importance of that local skill set. And that was a big part of the success.
That's really critical, engaging with the community. And now I want to jump to, a more difficult topic maybe is cost. So how much does a structure like this cost? And in terms of financing, where does the model looking like? Is it from government funding from the government? Is it green banks, energy service companies? To scale the industry, what financial growth model do you think would be most effective going forward?
Yeah, so cost is, you're right, is a difficult question because it's a new technology. Certainly a lot of, and this is not unique to ORPC, these first demonstration projects are one-off projects. So there's not an established supply chain that really can drive down costs. So that's not easy to answer. Typically the industry looks at, either a cost of the device or the levelized cost of energy from a device, which is a way to compare it to others. I would say that ORPC is similar to other companies in this field where the cost is competitive in some of these high cost markets, but not yet competitive in utility scale markets. So, how do we do that? How do we, get to the point where we are? I mentioned before that we've been very successful and grateful from the getting federal funding support. The U.S. Department of Energy has been, their Water Power Technology Office has been a big proponent of the industry. It supported us. It supported companies like Verdant, who deployed turbines in the East River in New York. It depends on kind of the technology readiness level, but a lot of those are kind of geared towards earlier stage development. What's interesting in Igiagig is we the community, and they're the ones that actually were granted the funds. We worked in partnership with them, but they were able to get Water Power Technology Office for the initial demonstration, and then we worked with them to get Department of Energy Indian Energy Office funds to kind of build out the balance of the system, and that kind of shows that pivot from research and development into commercialization, where it opens up new funding sources. There's still quite a gap. I think ORPC is certainly a leader in the industry, but there's a big gap between the research and development and the commercialization. And our feeling is that, like Igiagig, supporting and funding projects at the community level is kind of the biggest bang for the buck. So, we really have been strongly suggesting that to the funding agencies in multiple countries. And also there's the benefit at that local level in terms of energy sovereignty and energy ownership, which is so important. And there's obviously risk with new technology. The industry is not to a point where there's a tax equity market. So there's this gap here. So it's a combination of different funding streams. And really for us as a company and the industry, it's important to get devices in the water. So the more devices we can get in the water, grow the knowledge of the power systems and their benefits, and then reduce costs through the supply chain, and economies of scale is going to be really important.
Thank you for that. And with any new technology, any energy project, there's always going to be regulatory barriers and hurdles and permitting issues. I'm curious to learn about how you interact with the Bureau of Land Management, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, working with Coast Guardsmen or local fishermen. Do you run into any issues on permitting and also on ecological impact? You said that there's no damage to any of the fisheries. What about other ecological impact that these systems might have?
Well, I could spend a whole nother half an hour or more on that question, but yeah, it's a great question. It's a barrier to entry. Primarily hydrokinetic projects, if they're not in federal waters, are under the jurisdiction of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC. And so one of the challenges is FERC typically regulates hydropower, and hydrokinetics are so different than traditional hydropower. They have created a pilot process, but it's still kind of a round peg in a square hole. And so we have been very successful in building capacity internally at ORPC to navigate that process. We're the only company in the U.S. that has actually obtained a federal license for both a tidal energy and a river energy project on behalf of Igiagig. It's a heavy lift. There's a lot of questions from U.S. Fish and Wildlife and NOAA NIMS and the Coast Guard on the federal level, but also on the state level in terms of the environmental agencies. And for us, it's really about continuing to collect data, good data that they can have some confidence in, and using that to the extent possible. So we've collected acoustic data as it relates to fish and marine mammals, certainly interaction data as well, where we have millions of fish that have gone by the device in Igiagig without any known impacts. And so again, it's really working in close partnership, building that trust with the regulators and trying to leverage that. But it's a huge challenge. It's a lengthy process. As I showed in the presentation, there's a lot of different configurations of these technologies. So regulators may have become comfortable in Maine and Alaska with ORPC technology, but that's not necessarily the case with other technologies. So there's still a lot of work to be done. I think there's a lot of progress that's being made. But yeah, we're really looking to make that a priority in terms of policies to try to develop a process that is more proportional to what we're now perceiving as the known risk or lack of risk versus trying to do everything up front. And we're not oil and gas companies. We don't have deep pockets. And so it's been a big challenge and barriers for a lot of folks in the industry.
Thank you very much. Yeah, permitting and regulations are always going to be one of those major hurdles. We have a good question from the audience about site selection. How do you just choose where you place these installations? Is it cost benefit analysis? Is it diesel dependence? Or how did you go about deciding where to place these local installations?
Yeah, we have a lot of metrics, and we develop an internal database of resources. But fundamentally, it comes down to knowing the velocity resource. And there's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of areas that is not known. So we have the capability to actually go and collect data as well to assess that resource. But it's the physical velocity. It's the depth. Is there enough depth? What's the distance to the grid? What is the motivation and partnership opportunities in the community? What are their current concerns and cost burdens? All those factors are things that we would consider before we kind of engage on a more detailed level on any opportunity.
And one lightning round question, because we're running out of time. Where do you see the industry going in 5 years? What are your visions and goals for the next 5 years for the industry?
Yeah, I think there will be incredible growth in the industry. The industry has been in its infancy for a long time, and ORPC and other companies are really starting to demonstrate the benefits and the durability and the feasibility of these technologies. So I think that there'll be moving from single demonstrations to large arrays that have benefits and certainly cost reductions. So that value of that, as you said, the renewable baseload, I think will become more and more important moving into the future. And we're really excited about it.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all of that. And unfortunately, we're running out of time today. So I want to thank everyone here for tuning in, and especially Nathan for joining us today and sharing your insights and expertise with our audience. For more content from the Global Energy Center, please join us this coming week, tomorrow and over the next coming weeks for a few events. Tomorrow at 2:30 Eastern, we'll host a public discussion on the future of nuclear fusion technology. And at the end of the month, in honor of Veterans Month, on November 30th at 10 a.m., we'll host a panel of distinguished veteran clean energy leaders as they discuss pathways from military service to the advanced energy economy. I'd like to thank everyone who helped out put this event together, including Madeline Howe, Jackson Styron, Zainab Baronin, and our colleagues here at Ocean Renewable Power Company. This presentation is available on the Atlantic Council website, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and we encourage all of you to share it with your colleagues and with your friends. Thank you for joining us today. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and until next time.
Thanks, everyone.